Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, October 28th, 2021. How's it going? Today's my oldest's birthday, 21. That's pretty good. All right. Going to be a little bit distracted by thinking about that and what's going on with him away at school. But okay. Many things to round up today. Of course, it is Thursday. You may have read the Morning Post. It's the most Friday feeling Thursday in a long time, though that happens fairly frequently. And, gosh, there's a lot to get through. And the good news is that we have Greg Dworkin available to help us get through it. And, well, that's just going to back us up even more on all the stories we haven't been able to find time for on the air. But, it's been a pretty intense couple of days on the end of the Virginia gubernatorial election and the trumped up, like almost literally trumped up charges that seem to be dominating the last couple days of the race. Hopefully people have banked their votes already, but the bad news is that the underhanded, nasty, and misleading spin on the story, I don't know, I guess it appears to actually be affecting the polling on the race. So, kind of a depressing thought there to think about that possibly changing the outcome, and of course then living in that, Commonwealth, and having to deal with the consequences. Hopefully, everything works out and we hold on and there's no contest and everybody is entirely wrong about it being all that close. All right. Well, something to hope for anyway. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. We can hope for that anyhow. And now, as Bill says, for his next trick, let's find out what it's going to be. Kagro X will read this tweet in, here we go, not one, not two, but 16 different languages in less than 3 seconds. I don't think there's anything I can do about that one. No riff for that. I guess I'm finished. All right. Well, let's see. What's been happening this morning on the Twitters? Well, I just found out via roll call as breaking news. I'm sorry to hear about it having broken, but White House releases a $1.75 trillion framework for budget reconciliation package. So I guess I don't know whether that's something that they're going to be able to get to the floor today, or we're going to do some sort of a vote on a framework. I don't even know exactly what you bring to the floor when you're talking about a framework, but I guess we'll check in on that and see if we can figure out exactly what might be happening in the next couple of days. There's also, of course, the emergency backup plan of kicking things down the road a little bit and maybe reauthorizing a bit of highway transportation funding to give yourself a little bit more time to work out the details. I know at the beginning of the week they set themselves the ambitious goal of having a framework vote available for this week. Let's just see what's up since it's just breaking news and there's not much to it yet. Lindsay McPherson reporting for Roll Call that Biden will try to sell Capitol Hill Democrats on a reconciliation package totaling $1.75 trillion over a decade, with $555 billion in spending and tax breaks for clean energy investment, $400 billion for childcare and universal pre-kindergarten, and hundreds of billions of dollars for health care coverage, affordable housing, home care for seniors, and more. The White House said the measure would be fully offset with tax increases on multinationals' overseas profits, a minimum tax on the largest corporations, a surcharge on the highest income households, new IRS enforcement spending, and other pay-fors. Biden set to discuss the package with House Democrats at a 9 a.m. meeting on Capitol Hill. He's going over to their house to talk to them. It's 9:05, so I'm sure he's already there because everybody's always on time whenever they're moving presidential motorcades. All right, the report will be updated. If you think like that's an insufficient report, I agree with you, but they're acknowledging that they're going to be returning to the subject. All right, well, let's see. Other things happening this morning. I don't know. No big Twitter outrages, I don't think, that I've noticed. But like I said, plenty to round up today. Greg Dworkin ready to go. Here comes the raft of stories, clogging things up on the river. Big log jam of stories to get through today and tomorrow. So, all right. Good morning, Greg. How you doing?
Good morning. We're doing just fine, thank you.
Well, good. All right, then.
Trying to figure out the new Skype to
people.
find. Oh, there it is, where my chat is, where I bury all the stuff that I send
All
you
your
and then
notes.
can't find later.
Yeah, did they move
You know,
it
I
around
thought
on
I
you?
would start out with Virginia. We did a Virginia show yesterday, and maybe we should just finish that off.
Why not?
Sam Shirazi, who follows these things very, very closely, Sam Shirazi M on Twitter,
Okay.
tweeted a great map of what's going on in the early vote so far.
Map.
I'll give an explanation for that after. But the map shows that the Southwest, which is Republican, has low early vote rates, like really low.
Yes.
And Northern Virginia and Richmond suburbs are very solid, and they are Democratic. And that's where a lot of the vote lives. And the rest of Virginia more mixed with pockets of strengths and weaknesses. So the thing is, it's very hard to compare the early vote to anything else because the early vote laws
So early.
and rules changed since 2017, which was the last off-year election, and everything is hard to compare to a presidential election.
Right, true.
But estimates are that whereas Biden, who won Virginia pretty easily, banked about 700,000 early votes at a time that there was a pandemic and early voting was the thing.
Right.
And right now, the Democrats have about 200,000 banked votes, estimates from CBS. And it's not a pandemic, and there are Democrats that are interested in voting same day. And so because we're only going to get about 60% turnout compared to 2020, it's hard to know what any of that means. But the thing is, Democrats are voting okay at an okay rate for early vote. And the reason nobody can therefore say what that means is because nobody knows how many Republicans are going to turn up on Election Day. And nobody knows how many Democrats are going to turn up on Election Day.
Right, also.
So there are situations where in Nevada, for example, if you figure out what the early vote is and have an idea of certain counties, you can pretty much predict what's going to go on. John Ralston's a pro at that. In Virginia, it's not that easy. No. And the other thing that's changed is when the vote is going to be reported, we may get more early vote reports from Northern Virginia that we normally do. And so it's hard to know on Election Day exactly what's that's going to look like. The closer the race, the longer it's going to take to count everything. You know what that means.
Right. Audits.
But, whether it's going to be close or not and who wins, still up in the air. It looks to me, looking at all the tea leaves, that McAuliffe still is a small lead. But, how big or how small, it's all going to depend on turnout and, of course, crucial Waukesha County.
Yes, right. We moved that here for the time being. It's a movable county, and everyone can
But it's
borrow it
because the
eventually.
Republican vote is going to be on Election Day. That's why people are hedging their bets and saying we don't really know what this means.
Yeah. Well, we're back to the old-fashioned, you might actually have to wait for the election.
Well, the final poll that matters.
Right, exactly. I don't believe in polls. Only one poll that matters.
Well, polling in Virginia has been wrong. Polling in California for the recall was wrong. So it's hard to know.
It is. I don't really care for the predictions myself. But anyway,
One interesting observation, though, is that Biden has been active in Virginia.
True.
Trump is threatening to be active. McAuliffe says that Trump's going to come visit. Trump said stay tuned, but nobody really knows.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with him. He's a very lazy guy. I viewed it as the news as, he'll take the opportunity to come up and play golf at his golf course. But, I don't know if he's into
Well, it's
fall
hard to know
golfing,
whether or
really.
not that'll happen if there's no clear picture as to how he can charge the public for it.
Right. There's no money-making opportunity. It's fall. It's not, he can play golf in warm weather down in Florida. I couldn't figure out really what the attraction would be for him. So
Right. Matt Rogers on Twitter, who goes by the handle Politidope, and sometimes runs for office as a Democrat, posted on Twitter, here is moderate Glenn Youngkin surrogate Senator Amanda Chase, that's Republican Virginia 11,
yeah. Okay.
pre-spinning his loss by claiming voter fraud.
Yeah. Yeah, she's one of the loopier bunches, and I think she's the one that they made her sit in a lucite box on the Senate floor, isolated when she refused all mitigation strategies for COVID, and they all had plexiglass shields, but they built a full-on
like
box
Eichmann.
for her and dropped it on top of her. Yeah, pretty much. That's a great list to be on. Well, who else has done this? Well, there's May and Adolf Eichmann and Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, good company.
Sure.
So I don't know.
Harley
it
Quinn.
feels like McAuliffe is going to eke this out, but we'll have to see. We just don't know.
Yeah, well.
You know what? Monday show, and then Tuesday election, and then Wednesday we get to analyze what happened.
Yeah, great. I hope it goes well. That's all I can tell you. I did my part. I brought out the voters, and boy, this better work.
Well, so here's some follow-up stories on that.
Okay.
This one is from The Nation, and you can read Nation
Which
stories.
Nation?
You get 3 a month if you sign up for them. You get them free without subscribing. The GOP's
nice.
grievance industrial complex invades the classroom when parents become a posse of vigilantes. Outrage is in the saddle instead of teaching or learning. And they give, examples of something like, 27 states? More than 27 states have introduced legislation limiting how teachers can talk about race and racism in the classroom. Mm-hmm. But the enforcement will depend on parents who've been newly deputized to ensure that teachers aren't teaching critical race theory, a vague catch-all that's rapidly expanded to include anything that conservatives don't like.
Yeah, well, that's the big problem with it.
Right, that's like being a neoliberal. What's a neoliberal? Somebody I don't like.
Yeah. Well, that's included everything up to parents suggesting that teachers wear body cams to make sure that they can be monitored at all hours and don't say anything that sounds like they might be teaching kids about what happened in the Civil War.
Right, but here's the thing, and this brings it back to the Virginia discussion. Okay, this is Politico. A fear grows in Trump world. Have we gone too conspiratorial? There's growing worry that talk of stolen elections, machine rigging, foreign plots will hurt election reform efforts and sap turnout. Now, they don't cover this. It's Politico. They don't cover it in terms of whether it's right and wrong. They don't do right and wrong.
But
right, but they do. What kind of effects is it going to have on the election? And that has to do with what kind of turnout we're going to get in Virginia on the GOP side with Trump not on the ballot. And that's, the whole big question that nobody can answer. Have they gone so far as to convince their own voters that everything's rigged, so why bother? And they don't know that. They themselves don't know that. They have no idea.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But right. I am glad to see that, there's finally at least one. And it's always a Democrats wring their hands. They're not sure of their strategy. It's nice to see that actually happening on some front.
Well, that's the amazing thing, because you're absolutely right. Written into the DNA, is Democrats are never sure of doing the right thing is going to work, policy or otherwise. And Republicans are always convinced, no matter what, they've won even when they've lost. And they're incredibly confident about everything they do, no matter what, which is easy to do when you have a very simplistic strategy that is wrong, but, strong but wrong beats, right but weak. That's their whole philosophy. Hogan Gidley, who's one of the smarmiest people in the world, one of Donald Trump's top lieutenants, took a subtle dig at some Trump allies and put some distance between their efforts and his group's work on election reform. Other Republicans have expressed fears that talk of audits, machine rigging, and foreign plots will depress voter turnout and discourage some people from seeking office. Well, if it depresses people like Marsha Blackburn from seeking office in the future, that's okay.
Oh, yeah, right, sure.
Or Amanda Clark, or whatever her name is, from
Chase.
Virginia. Chase, yeah. Amanda Chase.
Like, I need Amanda Chase. That's
yeah.
I don't know why she would, but that's how I remember it.
I don't know. It remains to be seen. Again, I think that we maybe have to come back to that article and see whether or not it was prescient or stupid on Wednesday.
Okay.
We may not know who won, but we'll have a better idea of turnout.
Right. Well, that's true.
Or we may know who won if it's, not that close.
Yeah, in which case then I guess so. Well, I don't know. I wonder if it's not close and we know who won. My guess is it's gone to
McAuliffe.
And then so then stupid. All right.
But we'll see. So,
maybe,
that's
no,
all
no,
in
I'm
the
sorry.
background.
That one would
Another
be prescient.
piece here, Taken Goddard writes, a sign Democrats are sticking by Biden. The last time Virginia and New Jersey elected governors in 2017, then President Donald Trump was nowhere to be found with his approval rating below 40. Neither GOP nominee wanted him anywhere near the campaign.
Yeah.
Biden's polls are a little better, but not that much better, and Democrats have welcomed him.
Oh, I see.
But it's a completely different strategy. Right? People were running away from Trump.
Everything, yes.
And people are saying Biden needs to be there because Biden needs to emphasize the fact that democracy is on the ballot here and that Trump is in the background and will probably run in 2024. And you need to be aware of that. And you can't endorse things like book burning.
No, you should try to stay away from that. But I just took an odd twist. I thought that they were going to do the direct comparison of, do the Republicans in these races want Trump this time? Because it's not like he's gone. But to say, in 2017, Trump was nowhere to be found. I guess that's amazing. I mean, that really takes effort.
Right.
Not good effort, just effort.
Right. Oh, well, we are not sure Biden's a positive, and he may even be a negative, but he's showing up anyway.
Okay. Well,
because it's Politico. I mean, that's the way you have to look at it. Again, that's why the results are going to be so interesting. And then it does say, in Virginia, Trump's looming presence has turned the traditional bash the president midterm dynamic on its head, with Democrats embracing Biden and Republicans seeking to localize the election. So, that tells you what's going on in terms of the popularity of the two candidates in Virginia. Biden, won Virginia by 10, something like that?
Yes, I believe.
And so Youngkin advisor says, no, actually, McAuliffe is much less popular than Biden, so we'll focus on McAuliffe.
Yes.
And on the flip side, for McAuliffe, it's focused primarily on turning out its Democratic base, not trying to win anybody over. So this is a total base strategy, so they're focusing on Trump.
Okay.
So it makes total sense, and it seems to be good politics, and I would think that would win. But, of course, Democrats are wringing their hands until they see it actually works.
Yes.
Because Democrats do that.
Well, Democrats look ahead and think about what ifs, and Republicans simply don't. They just, assume that they're going to get their way. And I guess if they don't, then they go and threaten the person who did get their way until they resign in fear.
Well,
and,
this is the underlying
Right.
issue to Democrats. Right? Philip Bump writes about this. There's a consistency to the debate over book censorship to stress about change.
Okay.
Right? And even emphasizes, eliminating Dr. Seuss books. We talked about this yesterday at length about the fact that Virginia used to teach racism and just flat out taught racism in their schools.
Yes, that's
to kids. They just did. And that's only been a relatively recent change. But, if you're worried that the America you grew up with is changing because now Virginia isn't teaching racism, and by the way, you can't even get Dr. Seuss books anymore.
Yeah, right. Which,
then, the fact that it was the Seuss estate halting the publication, not the government. But, the whole concept here is, what's going on here. So, Philip Bump writes, the reason it's useful to elevate the controversy surrounding a beloved children's book author is because of the more recent discussion of the author of Beloved. This week, the campaign of Virginia Republican gubernatorial candidate Glenn Youngkin ran an ad featuring a mother who'd objected to a book that her son had been instructed to read in class. As you pointed out the other day, the son is now in his late 20s, is a lawyer, and is a Republican operative.
Yes, lawyer for the RNC.
She supported Youngkin, she said, because the Democrat in the race had vetoed a law created to address her concerns about that book.
Yeah.
Missing from the adverse full context, her son had been assigned Toni Morrison's novel Beloved as part of an advanced placement English class he took when he was in his late teens. When the controversy first emerged in 2013, he described the book as having been hard for him to handle. It gave him night terrors. He recovered now as a lawyer working for the Republican Party. And the incident was useful to Youngkin specifically because of the national debate over race in books. But Wednesday morning, which is yesterday, brought a new addition to the national conversation. The Dallas Morning News reported that Texas State Representative Matt Krause had started an investigation into the state's school curriculum, identifying scores of books that he believed warranted further investigation. Many focused on discussion of race, such as Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me, and books from historian Ibrahim X. Kendi. Others dealt with sexuality. The overarching concern was to identify any books that might make students feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress. Mein Kampf, as people noted, was not on that list.
Oh, well, don't get rid of that.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big concern, being ambushed by librarians in the bathroom.
Right. So education is fundamentally about being challenged. My 4-year-old finds reading frustrating, so he objects even to Dr. Seuss. We encourage him to do something hard, psychologically distressing, if you will, because he learns from it. Now, there are boundaries to this idea. Not every piece of writing would naturally fit in an educational curriculum. And, of course, state legislators scrutinizing what books are appropriate is a lot closer to state-sanctioned censorship than Dr. Seuss's estate-holding publication. So all of us, myself included, Philip, often use isolated, non-representative anecdotes to power rhetorical points. This is not ideal. There's no doubt many on the right who object to Krause's broad inquisition, just as there's many on the left who found the Seuss estate's decision disconcerting. It's nonetheless worth highlighting how the new discussion of limiting access to books in schools overlaps with the old discussion about how access to books was being limited. And there's a through line. And so, he's making the point that obviously this is being used for purposes. Again, speaking of Virginia, all you need to do is remember Ed Gillespie and how important the caravans were until the day after the election when Gillespie lost, and then nobody cared anymore.
Yes, and they are trying the caravan thing again, by the way.
Yeah, but, it's not going to come to fruition fast enough to help Youngkin.
Right.
And it didn't help Gillespie, who wasn't elected.
Right. So that's why they're sending a fleet of Teslas to the caravan.
Yeah, with government subsidies.
Right. All right. Well, that's interesting. I do have some questions about whether I guess there are enough people in the world that eventually you will find someone on whatever the left is that actually was disconcerted over the cessation of publication, the withholding of the publication rights from the Seuss estate. But he throws that out there as kind of a both sides-ish thing. Like, you know what? I don't really know anybody that said, "Oh, well, we got to have the racist Seuss books, or else you don't have the complete collection." I don't know. Someone must have, I guess. I'm sure there's a way to save that statement with one anecdote. So,
that's what's going on in Virginia. That's enough Virginia stuff, I think, for now. And again, we're going to have to wait until, end Tuesday, beginning Wednesday, to really get a sense of what's going on.
Right. Maybe even Thursday.
If Northern Virginia turns out the way they did for Northam, then, or if you want to look at it the other way, if they turn out the way they did for Gillespie, then Youngkin's going to lose.
Okay. Yeah.
And if he gets better results in Northern Virginia than Gillespie did, then he might win.
I guess that's always...
So it's all up to you, Northern Virginia.
Possible. Yeah.
Because that's where people live.
I don't know how popular he is. There's no shortage of yard signs, but we know whether or not they vote. So we'll see how it goes. Gosh, I hope it's over quickly. I will say this. There have been more signs along the road for how to get yourself a medical marijuana card than there have been for Youngkin. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know whether that helps or hurts. I guess conservative Virginians might be driving along saying, "What's all this medical marijuana here about?" So
yeah, what's all this about violins on TV anyway? So Yamiche Alcindor is posting this morning, per senior Biden administration official, POTUS will be unveiling a $1.75 trillion framework. It's unclear which lawyer supported it. Officials said several times we're confident this will earn the support of every Democratic senator and it'll pass the House. Biden was asked if there's support for the social spending framework. He said yes. Biden was asked if Bernie Sanders is on board. He said everybody's on board. Top line White House rundown of the $555 billion climate piece, which officials stress is the largest single investment in our clean energy economy in history. Or as John Harwood, paraphrasing John Harwood, he had sought much more, but if Biden can win passage of this framework along with infrastructure bill, be a large advance for Democratic priorities, extremely difficult to do with majorities this narrow which is why outcome remains uncertain. And so it remains the case we don't exactly know what's going to happen today. Yes, there's supposed to be a rules committee meeting on the framework, but I don't know how they do that without legislation in their hands. That is to say, you got to have firm language to mark up. And I don't know where we're at on that.
Maybe not at the rules committee, but somebody you would think, would have to have something.
So
I don't know. I am puzzled.
I don't know what they're going to do. And they've said this before and then not done it. And part of it is leadership pressure to say, look, we're having a meeting today. Get your act together and decide what you're going to do. And you better decide my way or we won't have a meeting.
Right. Well, yeah,
we did this a month ago.
To find out, I don't know who's working on what and what they have to put down on paper. Framework, of course, is not a real term, so I don't know.
Right. Pramila Jayapal, the leader of the House Progressives, said Wednesday that she'd convinced her members to accept an infrastructure vote without a Senate vote on the reconciliation package as long as the bills still move together in the House. And if they move together in the House, it means that the infrastructure one has to go first by about 30 minutes.
At least. So, okay.
So we don't know what any of that means either. And, folks, if you're having trouble understanding exactly what this means, don't worry. It's not the reporter's fault. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's really confusing, and it's unclear.
Yeah. All right. Well, they just appear to be anxious to engineer a vote of some kind on something. But, yeah, I really don't know what they might have in mind when they say framework.
Yeah, well, I have a breakdown of money, which we can go over after the break. At least that gives you some idea.
Sure. What better time for a breakdown than after the break? So, okay. Well, we'll take that breakdown and see your breakdown and
I like to have my breakdowns during the break so people can't hear it.
All right. Well, I started early. Not my fault. Okay. We'll be right back after this and then break down again, I guess. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on It's Radio. We're still here. Yes, right, I forgot to have the breakdown. I knew there was something I meant to do during the break. But you say you've got something, breakdown on the numbers and the reconciliation/framework thing.
Right, so what they're
they're
proposing is $1.75 billion.
Yes.
Dollars?
Euros.
Euros?
Yeah,
something.
No, I'm pretty sure it'll be dollars, right?
1,750 billion, 1.75 trillion. Here's how it would break down. 400 billion of that would go to child care and preschool.
One child, amazingly.
150 billion would go to home care.
Okay.
That would be like one of those big Friday Zillow homes,
Right, yes.
Child tax and earned income tax credits, 200 billion. Clean energy and climate investments, 555 billion, and that's why Biden was saying that's like incredibly huge. It's the biggest part of the package. It's important. And, basically stop saying you're not getting anything. That's ridiculous. You're getting a lot. ACA credits, including in uncovered states, 130 billion. Medicare hearing, but not vision and not dental, 35 billion.
All
right. That's the cheapest of the three. Housing, 150 billion. Higher ed and workforce, 40 billion. Equity and other investments, 90 billion. Total, 1,750 billion. That's 1.75 trillion. And then in parentheses, or also written in pencil, is immigration, 100 billion. I don't know what that means.
Oh,
I know what that means, I think.
What?
they're still trying to figure out a way to get past the parliamentarian that they want some stuff done that the parliamentarian keeps throwing out and says, no, that's not appropriate for
I think they're on
reconciliation.
Plan D at this
They're
point.
on plan, at least their third version, if not their fourth. But that's why I think that's in
in pencil.
italics and parentheses.
All right. On the back of the paper.
Right. Well, they still have to get the parliamentarian to agree to it. And, of course, the whole framework, as some have pointed out, is once you do this, let's say the House has rules committee, put that together and say, here are the rules for how we do this, which only means here are the rules for how we vote, right?
Yes.
I'm just using shorthand as a civilian. You have to explain that. I don't oversimplify it. So once rules does that, then they have to have a vote on all the details, and that's where the other committees come in.
Yeah, usually they do that first.
And that's where you have to have language, and it has to be, written down. You can't just sort of wave your hands at it before it comes to the full vote. That's, the question on the table is whether the mace is on the wall. So you have to have the full vote of the House, and then it has to go to the Senate. Remember, the framework hasn't passed the Senate yet. The infrastructure bill has. So whatever the House does, it then has to go to the Senate, and then they have to have their parliamentarian birdbath thing because it's reconciliation.
Right.
Correct? And so then, and only then, can the Senate vote on it. And that's why Jayapal's saying, I get that we might not be able to insist that, the Senate's all lined up before we go ahead and do what we do.
Okay.
Because that's going to take some time.
Yeah, you could. All right. Well,
I mean, even if you streamline it, it's still going to take some time.
Yes, no doubt about it. It always does. Okay. I mean, I guess the reason...
Does that sound right in terms of a conceptual framework as to what's going on?
I think so. I mean, if they can get away with a framework, we can too.
Why not?
All right. I mean, and I guess the reason ultimately it won't... what eventually passes will be more than a framework. But I guess a reconciliation bill always is just sort of an amalgamation of previously existing legislation, things that they've worked out that could be addressed as freestanding bills, although, there would be procedural hurdles in the Senate. You'd be subject to the filibuster. But packing it into a reconciliation bill at this point, it's not that these are newly invented programs that they just came up with in the last day or two and haven't really been able to flesh out. Not that kind of framework. This is just sort of the reconciliation bill is a package of other legislation that they just cobble together, things that people have worked out in hearings and markups before that they think can make it through the reconciliation process, and then they send all of that to the budget committee to pound it into one bill, and then in the House to the rules committee to have a rule on how you'll treat it. But they don't have a great deal of flexibility in the rules committee in the House for this one because the rules are statutory. Because it's reconciliation. But anyway, in case you're wondering, how do you do this in 2 days? The answer is all these policy pieces were put together over a period of months, just like regular policy bills. They're just being added together. Which ones will go in reconciliation, and what will that total number be, is the framework and the last-minute scramble. Yep.
So that's where we stand. So let's step back a little bit and look at some of the politics here. Interesting stuff from our school who tweets, sure would be a nice break from the mansion and cinema show if some press would ask Collins and Murkowski their take on stuff like family leave or vision and dental for seniors. Mm-hmm. Republicans get to be against popular legislation without any heat whatsoever. It's endlessly frustrating. The degree to which opposing programs that would benefit your constituents has been normalized because, of course, Republicans aren't expected to engage and legislate when they're out of power.
True.
But it's more than that, because as one of my reporter friends was telling me offline, look at how people can basically vote when they have the opportunity to vote, because it's a separate vote, for progressive Democratic programs, but the Republican governor candidate, for example. You know, I want to reform election and make it fair, and I'm voting for this Republican who opposed it.
Right.
I want to expand Medicaid, and I'm voting for this Republican who opposed it. They do that all the time in states.
Sure.
And there's no penalty for the Republican opposing it so long as he's on your team. And, you know, hey, it's the Houston Astros. They cheat, but hey, they win. You know, that's what matters.
Yeah, for them, sure.
For them. Yeah. For the Patriots. You know, it's a team thing. And it's our team, so we're willing to overlook the fact that this legislation appears to be semi-progressive. But we claim we're conservatives. So we're voting for the conservative governor who really is on our team, is going to, own the libs. And that's really what we care about, not policy.
Yeah. And maybe we can even undo the actual progressive parts of it at the state level later on.
Yeah, maybe. But we're talking governors here, so it's all state level. So, what we'll do is we'll agree to this great policy that'll help us, and then we'll vote for the people who are opposing it, and we won't penalize them. And at the national level, we'll vote for Republicans who oppose the Affordable Care Act because we like the idea of having, good legislation that helps us. And this way, child tax credit or, Social Security, whatever, will recognize that Democrats voted for this and Republicans didn't, but will vote for the Republican who opposed it because other reasons. And besides, I'm sure he'll say that, now that it's law and we're benefiting, he's opposed to get rid of it. We tried getting rid of it and that didn't work, which is another point to bring up. Dave Darmafel, political scientist, reminds us that when Republicans, in fact, were in power, and this is a point Claire McCaskill made, Republicans had unified government under Trump and not only couldn't get infrastructure done, they couldn't even get their wall built.
That's true. Right.
And they couldn't overturn the Affordable Care Act either.
Right. That's the one I thought we were going to. But
That's the one I had.
The wall.
Of course, there's no deal yet. Yeah. But if the Democrats actually pull this off, they did something the Republicans couldn't do with more votes.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we spent a little bit of time on that the other day. I forget whose piece it was, but typically the outcome of unified government in Washington isn't a great deal of policy success. It's a lot of failures. And managing to pass, in particular, 2 reconciliation bills with the narrowest majorities in both houses would be quite an accomplishment. Of course, it would be a bigger accomplishment if there was more awesome stuff in the bill, but just getting it to passage is almost unprecedented in modern practice.
Let's wait and see that it actually happens. But if it does, boy, there's a lot to be said about that, including about Pelosi and Schumer and the way they did it.
Yes.
Which people don't always like to do. They don't always like to credit them. But you know what? If this gets done, they get a lot of the credit.
Yeah. No one else.
Meanwhile, other things going on. Well, Darren Samuelson has a piece which is paywall, but his tweet storm there that I sent you from Business Insider sort of covers it. The Trump taint is sticking to Jeffrey Clark. Jeffrey Clark is the third-ranking individual who told the first-ranking individual, I think was another Jeffrey Rosen.
Yeah, I think so.
That, listen, if you go along with what Trump wants, I won't try to overthrow you.
Yeah.
One friend to another. I'm just, saying.
Yeah. That guy.
So the Trump taint is sticking to Jeffrey Clark. It's a byproduct of his service in the waning days of the administration when he tried to take over DOJ as part of Trump's last-ditch effort to overturn the 2020 election results. In the 10 months since the would-be Justice Department coup, Clark's name has been scrubbed from the conservative legal group where he'd landed his first post-Trump job. Yeah. He's been lawyered up, and days before his Friday interview with the House committee investigating January 6th, Clark parted ways with the defense lawyer Robert Driscoll. The House panel, made up of 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans, is narrowing in on Trump's attempt to oust acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen and replace him with Clark. In the eyes of several former colleagues, Clark has joined the ranks of once respected conservative lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, who have been burned flying too close to Trump Honestly, I feel bad that the guy appears to have been canceled. He made his own bed, but I don't wish anybody to be unemployable, which I think is a great quote that really tells you everything you need to know about Washington.
Yeah,
it's unconstitutional, it's immoral, it's illegal, it's horrible. He eats babies, he boils puppies. But I feel bad that he can't get a job after that because, that's what matters.
Yeah, because he's on my tennis doubles team. I don't know.
Something like that.
I guess.
Another one. My own assessment of Clark is he wouldn't necessarily have just by himself jumped into something like this for another former DOJ colleague. There are people sort of giving him moral support and egging him on. I'm not saying that to excuse him. But
you are, actually.
You could feel he did something stupid and still feel sorry for him.
Not that.
No.
Yeah, not that one.
But these are former DOJ colleagues, so I have to presume this is Trump world.
I guess so. Oh, yeah, I suppose that's... Yeah, maybe that explains it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel maybe a little bit more of that I don't feel sorry for them, but I could see why, like, say, John Eastman would be able to perhaps survive this. But, yeah, Clark's role in this was really like, nah, you should be canceled.
that was not good. But going back to that point about, the real thing that matters in Washington is whether you can get employed.
I guess.
The Business Insider version of it, that you click on and open up for pay, has this bullet point. When the White House subpoenaed him, Clark disappeared from the website of a conservative legal group.
Yes.
The point I'm making here is that all you people say, well, January 6th people can't do anything. They're going to subpoena people. They won't show up. And, well, you know what? Subpoenaing people actually has consequences. Good for them. If it makes Clark unemployable, I'm all for it. I don't care whether he shows up.
True. That wasn't the original intent, and we'd much rather be able to hold him accountable in different ways. But it's good that they're, the repercussions.
I'm just trying to make that point because there really are,
right.
Repercussions. It's not just simply, Steve Bannon said no, so that's the end of it. Well,
True.
Maybe for Steve Bannon because he's like unemployable anyway.
Yeah.
Except by, people from Hungary.
Yeah. From hunger, in fact.
Despots and would-be strongmen. But, the article's making the point that the Trump thing is sticking to Jeffrey Clark, and I'm okay with that.
Stop saying. Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, right. He was one of the worst actors of the group. And good. I'm glad.
Right.
Okay. I'll take it.
Other things to talk about? Not all that much. Here's an interesting one in terms of identifying, and this is HuffPost. They're not Huffington anymore.
Right.
He dressed as press
to
storm the Capitol. Now we know he runs a white nationalist website. Matthew Pearce was one of the most malevolent characters in Washington, D.C. The horrifying extent of his extremism has gone unreported until now. He actually disguised himself as a press person and actually got away with an indictment for a few days or weeks because the judge said, you can't go charging press for doing their job. And the government had to come back and say, well, now we have proof he wasn't press. We said he was. You said we didn't have proof. Here's the proof. He was only disguised as a press person.
Okay.
The outfit he supposedly worked for is a white nationalist website. Right. That doesn't count as press, not in the way we define it. And so the judge said, okay, fine.
Good.
So, on January 6th, Matthew Thomas Pearce, 45-year-old Navy veteran from Irvine, California, arrived at the Capitol with a red patch reading "Don't Shoot Press" sewed to the back of his black tactical vest. Big white letters on his helmet screamed "Press," and a press pass declaring his credentials was around his neck. But later that day, it was clear Pearce was actually a participant in the anti-democratic Save America rally, which had just exploded into a deadly attempted insurrection. Moreover, it was clear he hated journalists. He, first of all, mission accomplished, patriots, he said to the scattered cheers. History's been made. And then, before handing off the microphone to a fellow Make America Great Again enthusiast, Pearce gestured over to a patch of grass near the Capitol building. The lying press is hidden over there. And then led a group of 20 supporters of former President Trump to a staging area for media outlets where he immediately started accosting reporters, at one point targeting an Israeli correspondent with anti-Semitic slurs.
Oh, fantastic.
Right. So, he's been indicted, arrested and indicted.
All right, so they needed to sort that out. He thought
but the whole point about, they were just a bunch of patriots.
Yeah. Well,
they were Antifa.
No one's buying that. Uh-huh. Yeah. Still people who believe
no,
that.
None of that is true.
All right. Well, yeah, this one is apparently particularly egregious, and it's good that they took some time, sorted this out. But yeah, it's kind of disconcerting that really all you have to do to evade the consequences, at least for a while, is write press on your helmet while you're rioting. But okay, the wheels turn slowly, but at least they turn.
Sometimes you scratch your head and say, I don't understand. Why do you think that counts as an excuse? I understand you're using words and they're English, but they don't make any sense. I had the same reaction when the Taliban used to say about bin Laden, well, of course we can't turn him over to the Americans. He's our guest.
Well,
as if he's our guest justifies everything.
That may be, well, I don't know. What am I going to do? Make an excuse for them? There's a cultural
back in the day,
that
that's
we
what they
don't
said.
Understand. Yeah.
And you read it and you say, wait, so he's your guest. He just burned down the house. He's still responsible, right?
Yeah.
Or are you saying you are?
There is, I mean, I understand from like television drama, which is to say not really through any scholarly understanding whatsoever. But there is I guess a cultural, it's alleged there's a cultural thing to that. A very big cultural difference.
I mean, I get all of that, but hey, come up with something better for the American public.
Well, sure, right, yeah. I mean, that's not going to work in America.
It's not going to work.
But nothing. What is the Taliban going to say? Like that's going to make people say they are the Taliban, but that's a good point. Like that's not really going to happen either. But so
exactly.
It's fine. You're in a bad spot. You're the Taliban. It's not going to go well for you here. That's all right. Okay. Well, I understand. That's a big deal to them.
Well, you have to understand. I was just trying to support Trump. That is not an excuse.
That's a different story entirely.
Even more importantly, I was just trying to stay employed.
Yeah.
You're saying that as if that matters, like to the rest of us.
We want to employ you making license plates. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I guess this guy comes from a weird place, and in his mind, of course, I'm sure when he went into it, he said this will work because as you know, meaning as you know, I think this, I think that the liberal media gets away with everything. So if I just disguise myself as the liberal media, I too will get away with everything. And then he finds out, oh, that was not true, and now I'm in trouble.
Well, it's even more like, well, I just got rid of my parents, feel sorry for me because now I'm an orphan.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess so. And, all right, well, I'm glad to see that this guy is in for it now. I did see that story. I put that away. In case you hadn't gotten to it, we would have eventually. But now
right. So, one gets the feeling that the January 6th committee, and Liz Cheney has said this, and I don't know the people who are listening, but they're getting stuff done. And yes, it takes forever, but sometimes complicated things do take forever. But if one of the things that they are zeroing in on is what exactly happened at the Justice Department,
that's good.
And people like Jeffrey Clark are going to wind up, on the hot seat. That's fine. That's exactly where the committee should be going.
Yeah, and it might even be strategically a good choice, given that. A lot of times, a lot of the criticism that the committee has come in for is really criticism that people ought to be lobbying at, and they are, at the Justice Department. Why aren't you pursuing criminal investigations of these people? And I guess if you start turning up the heat and saying, if you stood by and watched too much rather than made a case against somebody that needed to be brought up on charges over here at DOJ, we're going to scrutinize your role. And maybe that changes the way they view the pressure to bring open investigations and bring charges.
The joy is still at post office. Who's still at Justice?
Go find out. Yeah.
Well, let's look at that. I mean, who are the people who were thinking that maybe we shouldn't do anything?
I don't know. But yeah, you should find out. And it's an interesting way in. In the last administration, there were people who tried to rig things from the inside, and we're going to start subpoenaing the records and the paperwork, and some other names might come up as unduly sympathetic to the January 6th rioters in the course of our investigation. And just wanted you to know that, and that the American people would like to see some more investigative work and prosecution coming from DOJ. Just side note. In the meantime, hand over all the records so I can tell who might still be there, who had a hand in this, and, maybe wheels start turning.
Right. Anyway, so that's the story. At least that's my story for this week.
All right.
I'll be back on Monday.
That's a good time.
And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about how things look in Virginia. And then on Wednesday, where we'll definitely talk about how things looked in Virginia.
Right.
And we'll go from there.
All right. That's a little
Alrighty,
too much
take
planning
care. I'll
for
talk
me.
to you then.
Okay. Very good. See you soon. And, now time to prepare ourselves for the big weekend waiting for us to get to the exciting week next week. I got a couple other stories to share with you. I'm wondering if there's much more to the story in HuffPost there, because it's a lengthier narrative, and I thought I might spend some more time on it just so that we could get familiar with the ecosystem that gave rise to this guy. What's his name? Matthew Pearce. That's another aspect of the story. Maybe we can begin on that stuff and head out into the break and read a little bit more on the other side, because it's going to be a long haul through this article. But I think it's important as they begin to unravel this thing, we need to know the players so that we can keep up when the investigation goes even further. So again, this is the piece. The title is "He Dressed as Press to Storm the Capitol. Now we know he runs a white nationalist website." By the way, reminder that even when it doesn't happen, it outrages the right wing when people assume dress that they think, that the Republicans think, that they're not entitled to based on gender, and then sneak into places that people think they ought not to be rightfully allowed. But it's okay if you're doing it as press and storming the Capitol and leading a riot. I don't know. That's just kind of weird. Anyway, subheader here, Matthew Pearce was one of the most malevolent characters in Washington, D.C., so we better check it out. On January 6th, the horrifying extent of his extremism has gone unreported until now. So congratulations to Christopher Matthias for being the now in that subheader. January 6th, right? Okay. On January 6th, Matthew Thomas Pearce, you need to know his middle name, 45-year-old Navy veteran. Actually, Greg told you this part, right? He's from Irvine, gets to the Capitol. He's dressed up in materials to make it look like he's there as a member of whatever the legitimate press is these days. But as evidenced from various videos of the day, you see him by the end of the day addressing people on the Capitol steps and saying what a great thing the day's insurrection has been. And then the irony of him being dressed as a journalist when in fact he hates journalists, and he says, let's all go over there and excoriate and accost the journalists. And I don't know whether he was involved in my thoughts. I thought they were going to tell me that he was one of the people that were on video destroying all the video equipment from local press outlets covering the happenings there. But instead we got the surprise shocker that there was, in fact, video of him, what did they say? Targeting an Israeli television news correspondent with anti-Semitic slurs. And what do you know? It turns out that he's a bit of a white supremacist. So let's get into the story here. Months earlier in July, after being arrested and charged for being part of the horde that invaded the Capitol building, Pearce once again tried to pass himself off as a journalist, telling the Associated Press that he was in the Capitol as, quote, part of a legitimate news organization, which he declined to name. That's how legitimate it was. The record will show I was not there in any illegal capacity, he said. I think he thinks that that gives him a free pass. And I guess it comes from his warped perception of what the press actually does in this country. But HuffPost has learned that the name of Pearce's, quote, legitimate news organization is actually called the Happening Center, which doesn't give itself away the way things like Daily Stormer might, for instance, but the Happening Center. And it's an unabashedly white nationalist website which hosts live streams and a private message forum. So anyway, it's gained thousands of followers throughout the political tumult of 2020. Videos and social media posts produced by Happening Center, archived and preserved by anonymous anti-fascist researchers, show it at times embracing outright neo-Nazism and praising mass murderers. Not a good place. Of all the characters at the Capitol on January 6th, Pearce could prove to be one of the most malevolent. That's hedging from the headlines, right? The horrifying extent of his extremism has gone unreported, both in the press and in court documents, and is further evidence of the fascist ideology that drove the events of January 6th. So if it's not in court documents yet, this would be a rather important piece. And really, it's been a tremendous thing how much really crucial evidence of extremism has been turned up by journalists and outside investigators, and is accepted after being scrutinized for validity and strength, ends up getting included in the charging documents or brought in as evidence at the trials of a lot of these people. It's really been an amazing effort. So back to the piece here. His presence also undercuts the revisionist right-wing narrative that the rioters were merely a group of bumbling MAGA tourists, as opposed to what they really were, the vanguard of a dangerous, racist mass movement hell-bent on destroying what exists of American democracy. Neither Pearce nor his lawyer, Hillary Potashner, I don't know how she emphasizes it, responded to repeated requests for comment on this story. So I guess it doesn't matter how she pronounces her name because she didn't say anything. But in the act of outlining for you that she didn't say anything, I may have gotten the name wrong. All right. Interesting. So like the next section of the story, it's broken into different subsections, is titled, in scare quotes, Mr. Extra Creepy. So that's got to be a good thing, right? You should get that person in as a character witness for this guy at trial. We'll review a little bit more of what's in store in the HuffPost piece, and then round up the other little bits of news here and there, some of which are fun and exciting. So stay tuned. Oh, also stay tuned for the crap. That comes later, too. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. In case you went anywhere and forgot where you were when you left, and now you're back, that's where it is. This is Kagro in the Morning Show. I don't know why I do this every time, as though there was, some way to wander off into some other part of Radioland. All right. Well, back to the article here about Matthew, is that right? Pearce. Television viewers across the world saw Pearce's zealotry that day on Al Jazeera Balkans. I didn't even realize that there was such a thing. They all have now the little local affiliates. Al Jazeera Balkans. He led a pack of Trump supporters as they charged into the part of the Capitol lawn designated for media, immediately harassing reporters, not supporters, but reporters. This is the lying press, which of course you'll all recognize from Hitler's own rhetoric. This is the lying press. Pearce yelled into the Al Jazeera camera as the correspondent struggled to continue his broadcast. In Denmark, viewers could see him heckle Danish broadcasting channel reporter Lillian Kretz. "Sorry, sir, I'm trying to do my job," Kretz pleaded with Pearce, attempting to calm him down. "Well, you know what? I'm trying to do my job too," Pearce responded, because he's a debater, you see. "You know what part of my job is? Getting in your face," which means he's not press, but okay. Anyway, it's interesting. So every part of the world got their own view of his white nationalist bigotry. That's nice. Never, of course, cross the streams. Don't show people in the Balkans what happened to the Danish television reporter. I think it's probably okay to do that. I don't think that was HuffPost's intention in segregating things this way. Just showing you. Of course, he would say, "Oh, that just goes to show that I'm not biased and prejudiced. I'm an equal opportunity offender," as they like to say, as though that was an excuse. You see, it's all coming from the same place. Why is it okay for you to be here if you're dressed up as press? Well, because press get to do whatever they want. Why are you saying these horrible, vile things to all these people? Well, because I'm an equal opportunity offender. That makes me either unbiased or possibly a stand-up comedian. And either way, I should be able to get away with whatever I want to do. Well, few things actually work that way. In Israel, of course, viewers would have seen Pearce barge in front of the camera while harassing Channel 13 reporter Gil Tamari, or Tamari, I'm not certain which. I'm going to get in your face now, and I'll tell you why. Yid. There you go. Thanks a lot for throwing in a little anti-Semitism there. Pearce said, using a slur for Jew. What is a goy? Pearce continued, using a Hebrew term for a non-Jewish person that in recent years has been appropriated by white supremacists as a way of self-identifying. We're going to own that word. We'll take it back from the Jews. Well, it's not taking it back. It's a Hebrew word. But okay. When Tamari replied that he didn't know what a goy was, I mean, it's possible. Also, it's not entirely clear to me off the top of my head whether it is, I mean, it borrows from, there's a Hebrew root to it, but I'm not certain that it's not a Yiddish term more than a Hebrew term. But anyway, when he may have just been, trying to get the hell out of the situation. But when Tamari replied that he didn't know what a goy was, Pearce grew angrier, calling him a lying Israeli who was playing the pilpul game. The term pilpul, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly or not, refers to a method of studying Jewish religious texts. You would think I would be more familiar with it, but I don't spend a great deal of time studying the religious texts, so maybe that's why. The term refers to a method of studying Jewish religious texts, has also been appropriated, so it doesn't even matter anymore, by anti-Semites as a way of referring to Jews as deceitful or conniving. So what's the hell's the difference? It doesn't matter what the words actually mean. It matters what anti-Semitic white nationalists are using it for. Actually, I mean, that's the reason I'm reading the article. So, if you ever run into this stuff, you'll know who you're dealing with. It'll happen to you online, and they'll say something like that to you, and you'll be like, I don't know what the F you're talking about. Back in the olden days when they were really cute about things and less openly anti-Semitic, you might have encountered it in other forms. Either them asking you how much George Soros was paying you to say this or that on Twitter, or, even more esoteric. Well, something Saul Alinsky says. Remember, you were supposed to understand that they really were on to you. They understood what really motivated you, and that was supposed to freak you out, that they had somehow gotten in your head, even if you were like, I actually don't know who that is, or I've since found out who that is, and I don't care, but you think I do. So for you, that's a psychological victory to call me out on Saul Alinsky. Anyway, near the end of the segment on Channel 13, Pearce blocked the entire camera with his head and could be seen mouthing the words, "The Goyim know," which is a reference to yet another anti-Semitic meme, this one used by neo-Nazis to depict Jews as evil puppet masters. And, I'm awake. I'm a woke guy. I've been red-pilled. The Goyim know what you're doing is what this is supposed to be about. Anyway, just giving you the slang and the signs so that, for how long would you have gone on perhaps thinking that the OK sign was just the OK sign if we weren't discussing, and reading the articles, dissecting what that was actually about? That's what I'm getting at here. As Pearce finally finished his rant and walked away, Tamari, the Israeli reporter, sarcastically quipped, "Thanks, man. Thank you very much for being with us." Okay. Pearce's real identity would go unknown for months. He had introduced himself to multiple people on January 6th as Mark, a group of anonymous online sleuths dedicated to exposing the January 6th rioters took to calling him Mr. Extra Creepy as they dug through photos and video footage looking for clues. So they each got little nicknames until they were identified by the people who were poring over all the video and pictures. By May, the sleuths had collected evidence showing that Mark, or Mr. Extra Creepy, was really Pearce, who public records show has mostly resided in Arizona and Florida, which is, I guess, where he got radicalized, but now lives in Southern California. He enlisted in the Navy in 1995 and served 2 years as damage controlman fireman apprentice. Like, that's almost admiral, I think. A Navy spokesperson told HuffPost, receiving the National Defense Service Medal. The Navy spokesperson would not disclose the circumstances of his separation from the military, and that might just be standard practice. I don't know. You tell me. Darwin, what do you think? The Navy spokesperson would not disclose the circumstances of his separation. Is that private? So it might not mean anything. In 2009, he was arrested and eventually pleaded guilty to federal charges of conspiracy. Wow, that's so surprising. Mail fraud, copyright infringement, and forfeiture. And according to court records, after he and an accomplice were caught selling $500,000 worth of counterfeit software. Okay, interesting. And copyright infringement and forfeiture? That struck me as weird. Like, and then he says, the article goes on to say it was selling counterfeit software. I wondered whether they meant counterfeiting as opposed to forfeiture. Like, is that a charge? Forfeiture? I've never heard of that. But not a criminal lawyer. Anyway, he was arrested again this past July, of course, on federal charges related to his joining the mob that invaded the Capitol. So, joined the Navy, got arrested. That's the record on this guy. That's not a very complete record. According to an FBI affidavit, surveillance footage showed Peirce entering the Capitol at 2:59 p.m. on January 6th through the Columbus door. They have to rename that. On the on the eastern side of the building. Clearly identifiable in his press helmet and vest. That wasn't a good idea for evading the cameras. Carrying a long black pole with a camera and a microphone affixed to the end. Peirce appeared to be standing off to the side, observing the crowd's interactions with the law enforcement officers, the affidavit says, which is not unpress-like, I guess. It's part of his costume. At approximately 3:03 p.m., as the crowd became more volatile, Peirce crossed the room and exited the rotunda. I mean, actually, that all probably will be mounted as part of his defense. Isn't that what a member of the working press might be expected to do if they were only in the building to cover the story? Court records show Peirce's disguise as a journalist had nearly gotten him off the hook. So, almost worked. When the Department of Justice first sought to charge him, a federal magistrate judge, I think Greg told us about this, declined to sign off on an arrest warrant, arguing prosecutors had failed to prove Peirce wasn't actually a reporter. There are laws in place, after all, the judge argued, that protect journalists from being prosecuted for doing their jobs. Prosecutors came back a week later and filed an amended affidavit. Peirce, the FBI had learned, had not received any credentials from the Capitol, which allowed members of the news media access to areas inside the Capitol, the affidavit stated, and that's a good point. There is, after all, we learned in my own attempt to get press credentials at one time, that they're fairly strict in terms of who they give press credentials to. It isn't the case, even though you can, dub yourself a member of the press by starting your own website and being a citizen journalist. We do, make room for that sort of thing. It's still the case that full access to the Capitol as a working journalist is something controlled through the House press galleries. And when you're talking about, citizen journalists with blogs or websites or whatever other media you might use to distribute your product, it's not that you can't be recognized as being there for a press mission, but in the absence of being issued credentials from the press galleries, you would have to be invited by a member's office and go in the guest entrance and sign in with the Capitol Police is the usual procedure when there's not a riot going on, and going through all of that. And you can be you get invited in just like any citizen might on a lobbying day mission, or if you're just you're a tourist in Washington and want to drop in on your congressperson, something like that. So it's not that this is being used to keep citizen journalists out or be gatekeepers for the press or anything like that. It's just if he's claiming he was a legitimate working member of the press who would have press credentials to wear on a lanyard around his neck? There's an easy answer for that. Does he, is there any record of him at the press galleries? No? Okay. Then fine. He's got fake credentials around his neck, and that's a problem. All right, so what else did the prosecutors come back with? He also had no employment history related to any news media organization. And although Peirce has a website, the website appears to be primarily used for live streaming and does not contain original content. The website also includes a primitive, or I say primitive, but it's private. I don't know why I got primitive out of it, but it's probably pretty primitive, and so are the people who are on it. It includes a private forum for discussions, which isn't really journalism. Private forum doesn't count. It's not publication of anything. And original content would probably help. So anyway, this time the judge signed off on the arrest warrant. Peirce has since pleaded not guilty to charges of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly conduct in a Capitol building, and parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. There's only one Capitol building, but Capitol complex building, I think, is what they really mean here. And that's been the general charge they've levied against a lot of the January 6 people. He was released from jail on the condition that he surrender his passport to authorities. He can just forge another one, I guess. Wear a location monitoring device. Stay away from Washington, D.C., except for when attending court. And not possess a firearm, destructive device, or other weapon. And you really just want to stay away from the destructive devices in general. Potashner, the lawyer for Peirce, didn't respond to a request for comment again as to whether she planned to argue in court that he was a member of the press on January 6th. Next section here, MAGA versus the media. Let's see. It's illustrated by a picture of two rioters posing with the "Murder the Media" graffiti that they left behind, I think, at the press galleries, as a matter of fact. And so interesting. Over the last couple decades, courts across the country have had to determine whether live streamers, bloggers, and other citizen journalists are real journalists, deserving of legal privileges attendant to the profession. These court decisions have sometimes been harsh to independent journalists doing solid ethical reporting. Still, it's hard to imagine a court that might be sympathetic to the handful of Capitol rioters who have tried to make the absurd claim that they were at the riot as reporters. White nationalist troll Tim Baked Alaska Gionet, I'm guessing at the pronunciation of his stupid name. That's his real name. I'm sorry. The stupid name is Baked Alaska. I'm guessing at the pronunciation of the real name. Live streamed himself from inside the Capitol building for nearly 30 minutes. The footage, according to a federal complaint, shows him screaming about revolution, calling a police officer an oath breaker and a piece of ass, that word, and encouraging people not to leave the building. Yet his attorney has argued in court that he was in D.C. with no agenda other than to film what was taking place. Of course, what was taking place was him losing his effing mind that he had never really been in possession of. Nicholas Oakes, or Oakes, O-C-H-S, a prominent member of the neo-fascist gang, the Proud Boys, and his friend Nicholas DiCarlo, also live-streamed from inside the Capitol. It's, in fact, those two who are posing in the picture mentioned earlier, the Murder the Media graffiti. That's Nicholas Oakes and Nicholas DiCarlo. The two Nicholases. Anyway, they live streamed from inside the Capitol where at one point they lit up cigarettes. I don't know, is that a problem? I think it's probably no smoking. Congress stopped the vote when we stormed the Capitol, Oakes said in a video. As we've been saying all day, we came here to stop the steal. That's going to get them in trouble. We did it, DiCarlo replies. That's what I came here to do. That's what we did. Later, both Oakes and DiCarlo claimed they were in the Capitol as journalists. The name of their media outlet, Murder the Media, another far-right live streaming website. The pair even posed for a photo by the door that I just described, where someone had scrawled Murder the Media. And my guess is it was one of them because really, honestly, nobody knows about that outlet. And that outlet might not even have existed except for January 6th. Anyway, where were we? The photo is a lasting reminder of the vicious contempt for the press among MAGA faithful on display at the Capitol and at the heart of any fascist movement. Trump supporters on January 6th dragged an Associated Press photographer down a set of stairs. "We'll effing kill you," someone screamed before tossing him over a ledge. They attacked camera crews, leading journalists to abandon their equipment, which other rioters then looted or destroyed. All told, the U.S. Press Freedom Tracker said it had documented 9 assaults of journalists during the chaos, along with multiple reports of equipment damage, harassment, and threats. A reporter tells us, "I was not there that day, but one rioter threatened a reporter whom he mistook for me." Interesting. Trump and his allies had fomented this hatred for years, of course, we all saw that. Deriding any outlet that didn't push the former president's propaganda as fake news. Let's see. Peirce preferred a slightly different nomenclature to describe the media. Lügenpresse, the term, which means lying press in German, was most commonly used by the Nazis and Adolf Hitler to discredit reporters, and has been revived as a slur among the modern right in far Germany. Lügenpresse. I'm guessing a German pronunciation. Peirce can be seen screaming on January 6th at a reporter from WBFF, your best friend forever, a Fox affiliate out of Baltimore. This is what's going to happen now. We're going to make you feel uncomfortable, because they're from Fox. I don't know. Peirce and a gang of Trump supporters continued to follow and loudly harangue the reporter. "All the good video was taken by the patriots that went inside," Peirce screamed at one point. "You weren't inside. Where were you?" "This is the most aggressive we've seen the crowd," the nervous reporter says on camera as he's being swarmed. WBFF producers eventually cut away back to the anchors in Baltimore. "We apologize for that," one of the anchors said. "Totally out of control." What an inappropriate response to all of that. Normalized it. You're apologizing for it? Why? Later that night, you should have been saying, "Oh my God, are you okay? Send in the National Guard and rescue that guy." Well, later that night, as the National Guard did, in fact, form a shielded phalanx around the Capitol building, and as the horror of the attempted insurrection came into focus, 5 deaths, lawmakers fleeing for their lives, president reportedly pleased with it all. Peirce stood at the edge of the Capitol lawn, still wearing his press vest and helmet. Shama Bartlett, who works for an independent live streaming media group called CJTV, was also there and recognized immediately that Peirce was not a journalist. He was an agitator. He wasn't there reporting the news, she recalled to HuffPost. When Bartlett approached Peirce, he identified himself as working for Happening Center and said he was live streaming himself on a platform called DLive. The Southern Poverty Law Center, by the way, documented at least 5 extremists who used DLive to stream from the insurrection. I don't know what the D is. I'm wondering if it's Discord, because more often than not, they end up using Discord to do their chats. I wouldn't be surprised if DLive was their streaming platform. Peirce showed Bartlett the press pass he'd made for himself and chuckled, you know press badges, they mean nothing," he said. "Yours is cute." Bartlett told HuffPost that it seemed Peirce believed he was press, but also believed that identifying as press was a way of working the system so you can do what you want without being targeted by the police. Peirce was clearly excited by what had transpired in D.C. that day. "This is just the start," he told Bartlett. "I'd say mission accomplished. We broke into the Capitol." So it's both the start and mission accomplished. Bartlett's interview with Peirce ended up lasting 30 minutes, during which time Peirce made multiple bigoted statements, until the National Guard eventually stepped in, pushing them from the edge of the Capitol lawn and surrounding the MAGA activists still lingering there. Bartlett and Peirce said their goodbyes. A few months later, in March, Bartlett says the FBI contacted her about her chat with Peirce. Agents were curious if she had better audio of the conversation. She didn't, and were particularly interested in a portion of the interview when Peirce talked about the attack as, quote, "the first operation of this new generation of patriots." That would be interesting. Next up, a legitimate news organization. The extremism Peirce displayed in his interview with Bartlett is echoed in even darker rhetoric put out by his website, Happening Center. The site is currently inactive, but an archived snapshot of the Happening Center homepage, captured by the Wayback Machine, incidentally, on January 6th, shows a banner image containing multiple far-right memes. Pepe the Frog makes his return here. The cartoon, which became the online mascot of white supremacists, is featured 5 times. Widgets for users to watch Happening Center's live stream on DLive and to donate money to the site were on top of the page. Happening Center appears to have had about 5,000 followers on DLive. The Happening Center swag shop has an All Communists Get the Rope sticker and a Degeneracy Must Be Purged sticker. What a fun bunch of stickers those are. Both on sale for, you'll never guess how much money they charge for these things. I mean, it's an inappropriate number all by itself, and of course ridiculous for 2 stickers. $14.88. Can you believe it? That price was, of course, intentional. $14.88 is common code among neo-Nazis. The number 14 referencing white supremacist David Lane's infamous 14 words slogan. You want to know the slogan again? It's, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. And the number 88, of course, shorthand in a dumb way for Heil Hitler, as H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. Just about the most childish stuff you could imagine. Anyway, it's hard to see how Peirce might argue in court that Happening Center was a legitimate news organization. Its main function appears to have been a hosting place for a racist hosting place for a racist and also for anti-Semitic live streams. Peirce and other Happening Center, quote, staff would display live videos from political demonstrations across the country while voicing commentary. If fans heard something they liked, they would donate money. In one live call-in episode, a copy of which was preserved by anti-fascist sleuths, a Happening Center staffer with a voice that sounds like Peirce's commented on live footage of Black Lives Matter protests. Some 600 people were watching, and a live comment section full of Pepe the Frog avatars chimed in with vile remarks. At one point in the episode, the voice, which sounds like Peirce, stated that Semitism and Semitic behavior is the cause of anti-Semitism. This voice also stated that any persecution of Jews happened for a, quote, good reason. Another, shorter live stream, again captured and preserved by anti-fascists, showed Peirce standing outside the Supreme Court at night, his face lit up menacingly by a red light. He was there, he explained to viewers, to deliver the, quote, official Happening Center eulogy for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who had just died. That's nice. Ginsburg's life, Peirce said into the camera, served no other purpose than to serve as a warning as to why no one should not allow... Well, I mean, the syntax of this is terrible, but then we get to the worst part of it. If you fix the syntax so that it means something, it served her life, served no other purpose than to serve as a warning as to why no one should allow vile C word here on the Supreme Court, you know, referring to the fact that she was a woman. That's nice. Then added, so we say of her passing, tamp the dirt down. Tamp the dirt down. He's a good guy. You want to know how bad he was? This is how bad he was. Although Happening Center never seems to have attracted more than a few thousand viewers, which is bad enough, it's clear that it was part of an online ecosystem of far-right live streamers who flocked to sites of civil unrest around the country, eager to attract viewers with dramatic scenes of protest or violence. In a January post to its account on Gab, the far-right Twitter knockoff, Happening Center alerted its fans that it had, quote, staff on the ground in hashtag DC for the inauguration, where the country was bracing for turmoil. Peirce appears to have had access to the Happening Center's Gab account. He's probably the only person at the Happening Center, so that stands to reason. In late February 2021, he got into an argument with another Gab user, posting an angry all-caps message littered with homophobic slurs from the site's account, which has over 3,500 followers, sadly enough. Hey, F word, as he's being homophobic here. He began, this is me on January 6th in front of the Capitol calling out the Zionist Jews to their faces. He misspells it here. Taught their faces live on Israeli TV. I was there. This is a bragging point for him. The picture accompanying the post shows Peirce interrupting the Israeli channel's broadcast. The words, "We know, the Goyim know," are inscribed across the photo. So thanks for identifying yourself. It's unclear if Peirce was responsible for all of the Happening Center's posts on Gab. What is clear is that the account routinely posted typo-filled racist and anti-Semitic content and sometimes praised mass killers. And again, reiterating the Semitic behavior is the primary cause of anti-Semitism. Read one post from February in a word-for-word recitation of what Peirce appears to have said on that live call-in episode. What a guy.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. We've consumed an entire segment with this article, but we are almost done. So then we can move on to the other stuff, which I promised you was crap. So if you were hanging on for that, we're almost there. Let's see. So there's the post on Gab that says exactly what the voice that sounds a lot like Peirce's said during the live call-in episode. Other posts. Oh, I'm sorry. This, I guess, is the same post, continuing in all caps. Hitler did nothing wrong. We will rid this world of the dirty rat kike and their subversive ways once and for all. So, like I said, a good guy. By the way, did get an answer from Darwin on the question of, well, is it just standard protocol for military branch spokespeople to simply say, well, I can't confirm the circumstances of his separation from the service. But that, I mean, it's almost their standard protocol. Darwin tells me, yeah, you know, they usually can't say much. They can usually basically, though, say whether it was an honorable discharge or other than honorable, which, you know, I mean, there's not a lot of great ways to separate from the military that are other than honorable, but I guess there's a multitude of them, not just a dishonorable discharge, but something else as well, which isn't great. But I guess we'll say this. The fact that the spokesperson is permitted to say that there was an honorable discharge if there was one, but opted not to say anything about it at all, tells you something. I guess either that perhaps there was something other than honorable about his separation, or that there was nothing dishonorable about his separation back in what would have been like late 90s. He served with no particular incident, but now that we know who he is, we decline to discuss the terms of his separation, because to say, although he did get an honorable discharge at the time, to say this Nazi bastard has got anything honorable about him in the name of the United States Navy is of no interest to anyone. So, I mean, it could be just something like that as well. But interesting that for whatever reason, they won't say the word honorable with respect to this guy. And I guess now you can see why. All right. To finish up here, a Gab post from the same month, I guess, and from their Happening Center account, was Read Siege, a reference to an anthology of neo-Nazi essays which advocates committing acts of terror. That's nice. Again, good decoding. I'm appreciative of the work here from HuffPost. In May, the Happening Center account wrote that Brenton Tarrant is a hero and shall be celebrated. Who knows who that is? Anybody? Well, they're referring here to the white supremacist who massacred 49 Muslims inside 2 New Zealand mosques. Not a good person. And I mean either of them here, the person who posted it or Tarrant. Many other posts used the N-word and slurs against Jewish people. You know what they are. Blah, blah, blah. Those N-word and I already used the slur for Jewish people, and kike-loving race traitors like you will have the last bullets saved for you, read one. And, there's no explicit threat here, as Senator Mike Lee would probably view it. I guess he spent his time in hearings yesterday saying what? That, the FBI and DOJ's concerns about the escalating violence at school board meetings around the country is unwarranted because there have been no explicit death threats. There have. I don't know why he lies and says there haven't. I mean, I guess he lies because the lying is advantageous to his supposed point, but that's easily disproved. Whatever. He's lying in order to make it look like the policy is somehow ridiculous when it's very clearly not. Anyway, not really the subject of what's going on here. Let's finish up. Last section here, I think. A white supremacist insurrection. Gosh, that appears to be exactly what it was. Peirce likely felt at home among the rioters of January 6th. Multiple white nationalist flags were spotted at the Capitol that day. Prominent white nationalist Nick Fuentes was there, reportedly encouraging the sea of red-hatted Trump supporters to invade the Capitol. Richard Barnett, a self-identifying white nationalist from Arkansas, he's the guy who took a seat in House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office with right here in the reporting, a crap-eating grin. That's just right in the reporting. I like that. On his face, propping his feet up on her desk. Robert Keith Packer walked through the halls of Congress wearing a sweatshirt emblazoned with a skull and crossbones and the words, Camp Auschwitz, work means freedom. A reference, of course, to the slogan on the gates of the infamous Nazi death camp. And white supremacist Brian Bentenker, who, according to a police affidavit, has voiced homicidal ideations, and has stated he wanted to run people over with a vehicle and kill people in a church, was photographed with a Confederate flag on the Capitol steps. Peirce seemed so at home that he stuck around D.C. on January 7th, giving a series of interviews and chatting with his MAGA brethren. One video shows Peirce as the sun set over D.C., attending a small vigil for Ashley Babbitt, the rioter fatally shot as she attempted to break into the House chamber. Peirce was no longer wearing his press gear. In an interview with a live streamer, he stated that the U.S. Air Force should name a base after Babbitt, who was an airwoman. Bad idea. It's unclear when Peirce left the Capitol that night. According to airline records obtained by the FBI, he flew out of D.C. the next day. The Happening Center website is taking a break. A message on its homepage reads, in all caps, due to the number of threats to Happening, and then there's a stray period in there, Happening period centers, staff and associates, we are temporarily suspending all news broadcasts until such time as the safety of our people can be guaranteed. That's another good sign that they're not real working journalists, because working journalists usually work through that kind of danger and rely on their legal staff to help them out. Its Gab account, however, has meanwhile been posting away daily, pushing anti-vax propaganda and whinging about the, quote, invasion of Haitian immigrants at the border. The banner image of the Gab account includes text that makes clear Happening Center's ever-burning hatred of the media. We will splinter the MSM into 1,000 pieces and scatter them to the wind, it says. Okay. Don't do that. Again, Christopher Matthias doing the work here. Ryan Riley contributing to the reporting. Ryan Riley doing great work on Twitter in particular, keeping us updated on the trials and the court happenings with respect to the January 6th rioters. So, okay, I did think that it was worth spending all that time just to get us familiar with their websites and lingo and things so you could know what's going on if you happen to spot it. Other news, smaller bore stories, just to bring you up to speed on it. Two interesting stories with financial elements to them. Raw Story is where I grabbed this one from. I don't know whether this is original reporting or not. We'll check it out. David Edwards wrote it up for Raw Story. I like the headline. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marjorie Trader Greene buys $50,000 worth of stock in Trump's social platform. Remember we discussed the other day how they merged with the SPAC, what was it, like Digital World Acquisition, and it became clear that it was, an effort to basically drain that thing of money and maybe line his own pockets in the effort. And we said, they noted in the article that the stock price of this SPAC or whatever, however you say it, I wouldn't say it rocketed, but it shot up on the news that there was going to be possibly this merger, and there were some idiots would be interested in investing some money in it. So maybe some non-ideological idiots would also be interested in going along for the ride. Well, Marjorie Trader Greene obviously was one of the ideological idiots who decided, Trump is a moneymaker. You got to get next to Trump if you want to make some money. So she either bought 50,000 or maybe up to 50,000. Sometimes the disclosure paperwork that they file isn't very specific, but this says that she bought $50,000 in stock in Trump's social platform and immediately loses thousands. Yay! That's pretty good news. I figured there would be, a pretty quick drop from that. I mean, you really have to be a quick mover to take advantage of a little bump that's going to come from Trump's name being associated with it, because that bump usually very quickly drops like a rock because everyone knows the Trump name is a bit of a loser. But Marjorie Trader Greene doesn't, and I'm pleased to note that she's lost several thousand of her own dollars, though she's probably dipping into the campaign money anyway and stealing that, so it might not make a big difference. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene could be out thousands of dollars after she purchased SPAC stock linked to former President Donald Trump's future social media platform. According to CNBC, I guess that's the original reporting on it, Greene filed a public disclosure revealing the $50,000 stake in Digital World Acquisition Corp., which has said that it will merge with Trump's social media company. Digital World Acquisition is DWAC for short in this reporting. DWAC saw its shares skyrocket over 800%. See, you could have made money if you were a quick mover. Over 800% after announcing the deal with Trump, but CNBC determined that it's almost certain that Greene has lost money on the investment. On Friday, DWAC, I guess it's almost certain, so she'll just say it's not. And that she actually made millions, and that's because Trump is so brilliant. Anyway, on Friday, DWAC opened at $118.80 a share. That would be last Friday, and dipped as low as $67.96 a share, the network pointed out. It's now trading around $63 a share. That means at best, Greene has lost about 7% on her investment. In a statement, Greene did not address the losses. This transaction was reported in compliance with House rules and provides all required details about the transaction, her office said. They didn't understand, I guess, why they were being asked about it. Or maybe they did, and they just said, well, we're not going to talk about it. And they don't have to. They just have to disclose it. They don't have to tell you how much they lost, I guess, until the next disclosure form is due. If she has lost so much that the value of the investment has dipped below whatever the low end of that range is, but I doubt it'll get that low. So we may never know, but it's fun to have heard the story. What does CNBC have to say about it? Anything else? I mean, I would like to know a little bit more about it, but let's see. There's a little more here. Shares of DWAC pulled back more than 30% this week, but the stock is still trading above $60 a share, 6 times higher than the SPAC IPO price of $10, whenever that was. But I don't think she got in on that ground floor because no one knew it was going to be associated with Trump. At least 2 hedge funds that were among early investors in DWAC, Lighthouse Investment Partners and Saba Capital Management, dumped their sizable stakes last week after learning of the SPAC's target company. Green is perhaps best known on Capitol Hill for her steadfast loyalty to Trump and incendiary beliefs, such as reportedly indicating support for executing top Democrats that have drawn bipartisan rebukes. The House in February stripped her of her committee assignments. We know this is all background stuff on her. Anything else of interest? Mask protest stuff. Despite the bipartisan criticism, Green remains a fierce supporter of Trump's and now has a financial interest in the former president's social media business. Her other transactions include sales on January 20th, the day President Joe Biden was inaugurated. According to her disclosure report, that day Green sold Facebook shares worth at least $15,000, Apple shares worth at least $15,000, Amazon shares of similar value, and shares of Alphabet, which owns Google, also at least $15,000. She did not report having sold any other securities that day. May or may not be of any interest to you. Then a discussion of SPACs and what they are and why Trump wants to start his own social media company, all of which I think we're familiar enough with that we can skip it and head back to Pocket and get over to the other interesting financial story of the day, also reported to me by Raw Story. So thanks very much for getting that done. Appreciate your eye on these stories. John Wright reporting this one that may change your mind about someone who you might otherwise not have liked a great deal. Revealed Elizabeth Holmes. You know Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos founder, that sort of, what was it? They're like the company with the fake blood testing product or whatever, and she's on trial for some fraud or another. I didn't really follow this story, although it's a fascinating one, I think. Probably could get into it. But here's the real news. Elizabeth Holmes allegedly duped Betsy DeVos's family out of $100 million. So, you know, that's pretty good. Do I have anything?
Of course, Stu. That is cool.
That is cool. It's a great thing. I'm like, what kind of sound effects have I got for this? Nothing really. But anyway, there's this one. I guess there's that. Anyway, doesn't really matter. But anytime you can rob the DeVosses of money, that's a good thing. It's not a Robin Hood thing. She didn't rob from the rich and give to the poor. She robbed from the rich and kept it. And she's a bad person, so that's bad too. But I like $100 million bite out of the DeVosses, if true. Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, who is currently on trial for wire fraud, you can read all about it in a linked article here, allegedly duped former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos's family out of $100 million. Nice. The Daily Beast reports that the DeVos family visited Theranos headquarters for a 5-hour meeting with Holmes and company president Ramesh Sunny Balwani in 2014, back when they were duping everybody, before agreeing to invest $100 million in the startup. So they went and looked, show me around, give me your pitch. And they just went in for it whole hog. The report is based on testimony during Holmes's trial from Lisa Peterson, who manages private equity investments for the DeVos family's RDV Corporation. The DV, obviously, for DeVos. I don't know which patriarch the R is for, but I don't know anything about the family. So if you're familiar, you probably know. Let's see. Peterson testified that Holmes was hand-picking uber-wealthy families to invest in the Palo Alto company, which claimed its portable blood testing devices could screen for scores of diseases with just the prick of a patient's finger. But, according to federal prosecutors, Holmes and Balwani knew their technology didn't work as advertised, even as they peddled it to consumers and high-powered investors, the Daily Beast reports. Shortly after this meeting, Peterson and DeVos family members gathered in the Theranos parking lot. They probably had a boardroom they could have used, but they gathered in the parking lot to discuss their planned $50 million investment, which they ultimately doubled, the Wall Street Journal reported. Peterson reportedly testified that the DeVos family was, quote, impressed by Theranos' revenue projections of $140 million in 2014 and $990 million in 2015, and that she didn't realize the firm had zero income in 2012 and 2013. Well, you're supposed to be a sophisticated investor of the type we discussed the other day. Guess she's not. During cross-examination, Holmes' attorney Lance Wade impugned Peterson's due diligence in researching Theranos before recommending the company to the DeVos family, the Daily Beast reports. According to Law 360 reporter Dorothy Atkins, who's covering Holmes' trial, Peterson acknowledged that the DeVos family investment firm never hired regulatory experts, counsel, or medical experts in the due diligence process because we didn't think we needed it. Wow, regulation. It sometimes helps. The Daily Beast reports that Peterson also testified that the DeVos family office, was concerned that if their investigation into Theranos was too thorough, the firm would rescind the invitation to invest in what was billed as a groundbreaking technology. Pretty funny. So in their greed, they saw the dollar signs here. They didn't want to have Holmes unhandpick them. You know, she did a great job tricking them into thinking that this was not only a great opportunity, but something exclusive that she could revoke if they checked too closely into what was going on. Imagine, you know, they keep telling you, right? Only, you know, they work hard and they're smart, and only the smart people are worth this much money. Well, I mean, everybody knows that if you don't have to be a sophisticated investor. Ask a non-sophisticated investor. If I make you responsible for someone else's $100 million investment and it's all on you, are you going to investigate and do your due diligence here and find out, is this a sound investment? Or are you just going to say, there's so much money at stake here that it's better that I just wing it and not know what I'm getting into? That's the meritocracy people who say these are the smart people. These are the people who deserve to be the leaders of our society. Well, I guess that answers a lot of questions. They're actually quite dumb and quite greedy and very easily manipulated. And I guess it's Elizabeth Holmes is just a genius at taking their money. It's almost too bad she didn't get away with it, except she would just become some other rich idiot that was stealing from the rest of us anyway. So much the better. And it's no happy ending for either one of them here, which makes me very happy. I'm good with that. All right, let's see. Two interesting pieces in here that we might even be able to get through on the developments in the Loudoun County story. Some other takes on what I was discussing yesterday. One from everybody's good friend, Amanda Marcotte in Salon. But both pieces taking a look back in history and saying, you know, this issue, this incident has a lot of hallmarks in conservative political history, and it's worth taking note of them, as we have in a couple other pieces about CRT and other similar issues. It's basically the same playbook here. So anyway, her piece in Salon, Conservatives Conjure Up a 21st Century Satanic Panic. Will it work? Giving the background on this, it may ring a bell for you. The Loudoun County case was rape. The anti-trans hysteria unleashed in Virginia, however, is wholly invented. I'm in agreement. Republicans thought they had a live one in Loudoun County, Virginia, and I guess it's close enough to the election that it might just work. I added that part. But as happens with most right-wing panics, things were not as they were made to seem. Ever since same-sex marriage was legalized, the right has been casting for a new villain in their endless culture wars. They swiftly landed on an even smaller and therefore less understood minority than gay people to demonize trans people. Their main weapon for driving up fear and hate was a myth that trans women, or cis men, pretending to be trans women, lurk in women's restrooms to rape unsuspecting cis women who enter these newly tolerant spaces. The problem was that it was nonsense. Research repeatedly shows that trans-inclusive bathroom policies have no link to sexual assault. Okay? It's trans people who are at higher risk of being assaulted if denied access to the facilities that match their gender identity. But after 2 girls in Loudoun County schools, which in a remarkable coincidence also happens to be ground zero for other astroturfed right-wing freakouts over woke school policies, were sexually assaulted, the right pounced. Rumors spread that this was a real live example of a man pretending to be a woman in order to rape strangers in the bathroom, and this was also not true. The sexual assaults absolutely did occur, and the school district appears to have mishandled the situation, but the assaults themselves don't resemble the trans panic urban legend. I'm not so certain that we agree on every aspect of whether or not the school district appears to have mishandled the situation, but there are certainly parts that could have been done better and parts for which the school board is apologizing, so they must also agree that they were mishandled. Anyway, one assault, of course, as you learned in our discussion earlier, happened in a classroom. The other did happen in a bathroom, but the school did not have a gender-inclusive policy at the time. Instead, the victim testified that she and the rapist had repeatedly snuck off to meet in the bathroom, as kids often do. Like the majority of rapes, this was a case where the victim knew her attacker, who was identified in court as a boy. So the story is not in any way evidence that gender-inclusive bathrooms are a threat to women and girls. This is the kind of acquaintance rape that the right usually finds themselves minimizing. This is a great point, as happened after accusations against Justice Brett Kavanaugh were made public and the release of a taped sexual assault confession from Donald Trump. Instead, the case is reminiscent of the satanic panic that swept the country in the 80s and 90s, which was driven by similar reactionary fears and wildly misguided ideas about the realities of sexual violence. Back then, the urban legend accused imaginary Satanists of raping and killing children. That's back, by the way, in QAnon, of course, which led all too often to actual miscarriages of justice. In some cases, crimes were made up entirely whole cloth, as happened in the infamous McMartin preschool case. In other cases, the crime was real, but the public's understanding of it was completely false. That's what happened in the West Memphis 3 case, where a very real murder of 3 young boys was spun as satanic ritual, resulting in the conviction of 3 innocent teenagers and the actual killer walking free. As Sarah Marshall of the You're Wrong About podcast explained to Vox earlier this year, the satanic panic first arose because women and mothers were entering the workplace in record numbers. Stories about daycares being dangerous places where Satanists rape children were a handy weapon to shame women who rejected the housewife role. Now, it's easy to see the parallels in the panic over trans people in bathrooms. In both cases, the right is wielding lurid but misleading stories of sexual violence to provoke anger and panic over changing gender norms and expanding human rights. And unfortunately, innocent people are getting attacked. Thankfully, in the Loudoun case, it appears the correct person was convicted of the actual crime, but the situation is still being weaponized against innocent people, specifically trans people, whose safety depends on having access to bathrooms that align with their gender identity. And as happened with the satanic panic, the titillating but misleading stories completely flip reality on its head. In the real world, patriarchy is the cause of sexual violence. In the world of reactionary fantasies, it's people who reject patriarchal norms, working women, trans people, who are the problems. In an essay that recently went viral, Marshall's podcast co-host Michael Hobbs identified one of the telltale signs that what you're dealing with is a moral panic and not a real problem. Irrelevant examples, which often turn out to be cases where these anecdotes actually demonstrated the opposite of the panic's core thesis. The Loudoun case is a crystal clear example of this. The rape definitely occurred, but it had nothing to do with gender-inclusive bathroom policies. On the contrary, it's yet another story in the long litany of Me Too stories where sexual violence is downplayed and ignored by sexist institutions, which is the exact opposite of the pro-patriarchy story that the conservatives stoking trans panic want to tell. The trans panic resembles the satanic panic in another way, reigniting the unfortunate tendency of a minority of feminists to play the role of useful idiots to reactionary forces, giving cover to what is ultimately an anti-feminist movement. Glad she said it and I didn't, but okay. In the 80s, a lot of feminists were understandably glad that the public was finally starting to pay attention to the problem of sex abuse after decades of feminists raising the alarm. This gratitude, however, all too often manifested as an unwillingness to be skeptical of the wild stories of Satanists and rape being pushed by the reactionary right. To be clear, plenty of feminists pushed back at the time, but a handful of feminists, fearful of returning to a time when victims were routinely disbelieved, were overly credulous to these impossible stories of satanic ritual abuse. The same thing goes on today with the trans panic. Very interesting points. A little bit more to the story, but I can see we're not going to get through all of that before this is end. But excellent points here. Maybe we'll return to the subject tomorrow if there's further developments, or just to get another perspective on the historical context of these kinds of accusations. But for now, time to end the show and hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next, right here on Networks Radio. Keep it tuned here for all the stories we didn't get to today.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Looks like Justice has in store for you some review of the Republican senators not only erupting at Garland's hearing yesterday, but their complete misrepresentation of the facts, and lots of screaming still about the Loudoun County case, even though they got it all flat wrong. And guess what? Ted Cruz is among them. Stay tuned.